Buzzard, would you mind doing the invocation?
Stand, please. Thank you. Dear Heavenly Father, as we gather here today to carry on the business of the Cherokee Nation, we ask that you put your guiding hand on our decisions and make sure that we ensure the proper detail that we go over the agenda that we vote what's best for the Cherokee Nation and Cherokee people. We ask all this in Christ's name. Amen.
Thank you.
Mary Fraley.
Here.
Bill Anglin.
Here.
Bill John Baker.
Here.
Jack Baker.
Here.
Harley Buzzard.
Here.
Julia Coates.
Here.
Bradley Cobb.
Withdraw.
Joe Crittenden. Jody Fishinghawk. Here. Janelle Fulbright. Here. John Garvin. Chuck Hoskin Jr. China Gloria Jordan. Curtis Snell. Chris Soap. David Thornton. Tara Callan Watts.
Honey.
We do have a quorum.
We have a quorum. Next order of business is approval of the minutes. Entertain a motion to approve in total the 15th and 25th unless there are objections.
I move to be approved.
Moved and second. Any discussion on the September 15th and 25th minutes? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Minutes stand approved as written. Okay, reports. Ms. Wright, Marshal Service. Hello.
Well, I'm not Mrs. Wright, but
All right.
I'm for work.
Kind of obvious.
Vance Smith, and she has on her budget highlights, she's waiving reimbursement for other programs and the BIA. Program highlights in District 3, we had an armed robbery, first-degree rape, child abuse, and child sexual abuse cases. The first-degree rape is in the Eastern District of the U.S. Attorney's Office. The individual entered a guilty plea. We're waiting sentencing on him. And I just got a call yesterday from the U.S. Attorney's Office. We had a gentleman charged in the Eastern District for aggravated assault and battery, shooting with intent, and assault and battery with a firearm, and he's going to enter a plea guilty also. And then in District 2, they had a child abuse case and a child molestation. And in District 1, one sex crime. Under her accomplishments, she's attended the community meetings in various different districts with program information, provided games, in-service training to the Jack Brown staff. Dare to 5th grades at Deloniga and Spavinaw with 31 children. Safety classes at Locust Grove, Wycliffe, and Spavinaw, 583 children. We began a Marshal Service Explorer program that has 8 participants, and began a shared leadership within the department. We're still working with other tribes in the state on interoperability and working with other tribes to propose that the BIA move the academy to Oklahoma in conjunction with Cleach. And we need the dare and safety classes. I guess this is a year to date. There's 4,067 students. Community information presentation, 3,045. Housing additions patrol, 913. New cross visitations is 3. We had 29 violent crimes investigated and 33 general crimes. And then we assisted other agencies with 1,212 cases.
Questions or comments? Yes, Mr. Soap?
Marshal Smith, do you have a date on the visit to Spavinaw?
No, I sure don't.
Did you get that and forward that to me, please?
Okay.
Just a visit, I assume he visited the school?
Which one, on the safety classes?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just a community visit to Spavinaw. And the reason I'm asking is because I've had a couple of community members saying that they were requesting presence for the Marshal Services in different capacities, and just want.
Oh, this is just on the, I believe, on the Eddie Warrior program
Okay.
that's conducted through the school.
Okay, but so you visited the schools?
No, I didn't. We had,
Well, I mean, the marshal services? in
somebody,
General?
yeah, somebody visited with the schools.
Okay, yeah, if you could just give me a date on that, I'd appreciate it.
Okay.
All, Mr. Stowe?
Yes, thank you.
Mr. Buzzard?
Yes, on this 3 new cross deputizations, who are they with?
I'm not sure who all they were with. Sharon and Lieutenant Tom Fitzgibbons handled the cross deputization agreement.
Okay, can you have the report that back to
Sure.
us? Thank you. Thank you.
Mr. Thornton?
a copy of the report? If they would, just send it to all tribal council members.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes. Mr. Snell?
Are you having any officers out in Delaware County and Adair County on the hunting situation?
We sure do.
Yeah.
Yeah. All districts are participating in that.
Good. Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Seeing there are none, thank you for the report.
Quite welcome.
Justice Department, Mr. Morton. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. We have, everyone's either in court or at training this week. I have 3 at the prosecutor's boot camp. I have 2 at a seminar in Oklahoma City. I have there's an attorney and a staff member at the water conference. And the Attorney General is in Washington, D.C. So I'm filling in this afternoon. Have any questions?
Any questions, Ms. Tyner? Ms. Tyner?
Mr. Morton, I know you shared with me a report earlier regarding the foreclosures.
Yes, I have made copies.
Okay, is this a good time to talk about it, or are you somewhere else on the? You want to wait
At
till-
any time, I think we're also set for discussion.
Well,
Either way, let
if
me
you
get
just
the
give
copies.
those out, and then I'll just hold my questions to
Okay.
this discussion on the mortgage foreclosure.
Oh, okay. Any other questions or comments for Mr. Morton?
Yeah,
Mr.
Make sure they knock that over.
Yeah, Mr. Morton, a
Yes.
situation come to my attention in Adair County where a non-citizen wrote a check for a tag on a car, and the check bounced. And since he's a non-citizen, what do we do?
On the checks, we
Or can we really do anything?
collect it either civilly or criminally, depending on if it does not fall within our jurisdiction. We would refer it to the appropriate authorities, and at the same time, we can also pursue it civilly. But I can look into it.
Anything else, Mr. Schott? Any other questions? Thank you, Nathan.
Thank you.
There's a report from the Election Commission in your books. I don't believe anyone's here from the Election Commission. So we'll move on to item 4, Tax Commission. Ms. Sweatston.
Ms. Wetson's unable to be here because family member's having surgery, so she asked me to step in. I believe you all have a report. If you have any questions, I'll do what I can to ask.
Any questions on Tax Commission report? Seeing none? Oh, Mr. Buzzard?
Just, Andy, could you give us a little bit of update on where the tobacco tax is?
Yeah, we've been negotiating new tobacco compact. We finalized, hopefully final draft. It's been sent to the governor's office, so it's under review for them. The last one we sent to them, it took them about 3 or 4 weeks to get it back to us. So that's what we're looking at. I want to report too that we've been asked to have our extended hours. We've been doing that all along for the last 3 months or so, and we're averaging about 2 customers a night. So that's something that
Corey Jordan?
You might want to consider not giving up on it yet.
Oh, I'm not. I was just trying to let you know what we're looking at right now. Yes,
The
ma'am.
reason being that I saw that y'all had just started advertising it in the newspaper, so it may pick up from there.
Hope so.
And the other thing, I had an occasion to go out and pick up my tag,
Mm-hmm.
and it might work better if you put something on the outside of your building
There-
to let them know that.
There have been signs posted.
Okay, there's
Sharon and I
that
ourselves did it. I think the first part of last week, we had some signs posted, and somehow someone or something took them down. So we posted all new signs. They're on almost every door.
I know
there.
when I pulled up there, that was the first thing I noticed, that it says they close at 4, and a lot of people wouldn't get out of their car.
See that, yes ma'am. They'll see that and then drive off, but we fixed that, I hope, to where when everybody pulls up, they can see there's a big sign that says extended hours and has our extended hours there. So hopefully we took care of that.
At least we can say we offered it to them.
That's right. They have their opportunity.
All right.
Any other questions? Thank you for the report.
Thank you.
Ms. Hanvey, self-governance. Afternoon, Vicki.
Good afternoon. You have my report. A couple of items that I'd like to point out for you, though, is we've been working on the contract support cost and negotiation of that for 2008. That will include Muskogee addition. And then for 2009, we'll be looking at including Hastings into our shortfall report. So we've been working on that primarily with Muskogee first, and then we'll start working on Hastings. But until Congress appropriates more funding for contract support, we may not see much money, but if they do, what the shortfall report does is it will get that on there, and then we will be in line to receive some of that money whenever it comes in. Another item that I wanted to be sure and point out to you is that the continuing resolution was approved through March 6th. We've already received funding. We received, on IHS side, we've already received funding for Hastings, including our other IHS funds. On DOI, however, we have some issues there that we're working on. The Department of Interior has interpreted part of the continuing resolution to say that items that they have not included in the President's budget, like JOM, HIP, certain general assistance programs, they're not going to fund those. And we confirmed that at a meeting I attended in D.C., and we are working on that, not only from the Cherokee perspective, but from the national perspective. But I do want to point that out to you. Along with that, last year we had extensive efforts to negotiate a 3-year funding agreement. However, with DOI differs from IHS in that you have to go back year after year to get a reprogramming request, which is the dollars and the footnotes that go with that. They have gone back to the original footnotes from before we even negotiated, and are putting language in there that we just cannot agree to. And so we're working on that as well. So DOI, we haven't received any money yet. IHS, through March 6th, the continuing resolution, that's already here.
Any questions for Ms. Hanvey? Yes, Mr. Bennett?
Vicki, what programs do you find most troubling with the DOI agreement?
It's primarily what they're trying to do is to say, whenever you start to negotiate, they want to negotiate off of the President's budget versus what the law was, the previous law. And we believe, some of the language that they're including is, I'm trying to think of a tactful way to say, we don't believe it agrees with the law, in that the department doesn't have the authority to reduce our base funding. Only Congress can do that. And that's pretty much primarily at the root of part of the issues. The other thing is with, say, with law enforcement funding, whatever funding comes into the BIA, they want to be able to distribute that how they deem necessary rather than based upon an allocation that the tribes have agreed to.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Ms. Handy? Thank you. Anyone here from the Gaming Commission? The report is in the book. Todd, do you want to give a brief on codification?
Codification continues to go well. We've divided up all the titles. I had a very productive meeting with Mr. Morton and new attorneys at the Cherokee Nation Attorney General's office. And they're young and energetic, and they're getting at it, so to speak. Is that correct? Yeah.
They're well ahead of my progress.
We're happy to have the infusion of energy and new blood on that process.
Does that include Nason?
Absolutely, absolutely.
I mean, the energetic part.
The energetic part, absolutely. But no, it goes well, and we're making much more progress on it.
Do you have a timeline prediction yet?
This is October. I would expect that we would have a product to you before the end of the year.
Great.
Yeah, but by December. And probably the December rules meeting, which will be near the end, we will have, if not a completed project, several of the titles ready to be approved.
Does anyone have any questions? Thank you, Todd. Nason, is anyone here, or do you want to report on GEG, or can you report on
I will check in with the Marshal Service, and if I can, I'll do the report next month. I'm not prepared for that one.
Okay, thank you.
I will supplement them.
Ms. Laura Jordan?
Yes, I move to amend the agenda to include as Report 9, a report from Charles Robertson of the Arkansas Riverbed Authority.
Second. Moved in second. Any discussion for amending the agenda to include Mr. Robertson? All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion carried. You want to come forward, Mr. Robertson, and give us a report on the Arkansas Riverbed? Appreciate you being here today.
Thank you.
We haven't had an update in quite a while.
Well, I understand that. I've got some, a report here to hand out. I'll keep one for myself.
While you're handing those out, do you want to tell them what your responsibilities are?
Yes. My name is Charlie Robertson. I am your new director of the Arkansas Riverbed Authority. I came in this position after being a consultant with Troy Wayne Potee for 6 years. Prior to that, I chaired the Arkansas Riverbed Settlement Committee on the federal side that actually came to the conclusion and final settlement of the Arkansas River. As some of you may or may not know, this has been an issue for 50 or 60 years, going back even into the 60s, and prior to that time we were still having issues as to the ownership. The ownership changed in 1970 with the Supreme Court case, which decided that the tribes, 3 tribes in this case, Cherokees, Choctaws, and Chickasaws, did own the Arkansas Riverbed. That was a piece of paper, basically. And from then, there was still controversy on the river regarding what did we own. It just said that we owned the river, but there was quite a bit of controversy as to what part of the river. Was there uplands included? There was a bunch of issues. That rocked along. I came into the Bureau of Indian Affairs in 1971. I came into the Oil and Gas Leasing Department. And in 1976, after the Supreme Court case, this Supreme Court sent this back to the Eastern Oklahoma Regional Office for that to go through their office, through the federal court, to do a quiet title action on this river, and they did, and they quiet title, they took back the monies that the state of Oklahoma had collected. Inside this report, we'll get to that in a few minutes, you'll see all the monies that we have generated from this river. But Basically, 76 on, we started leasing those properties on the Arkansas River. Primarily, the bulk of our income from the river comes from oil and gas leases. There are 33 producing properties and 6 non-producing at the present time. We also have 6 pending leases that are in at the DIA for approval right now. It is primarily just a gas. We have no oil production. This is all gas that we're receiving our income from the river. But it is something that generates some considerable income for our trust accounts that this goes into. This report, I'm skipping through a lot of it here, but for your own information, I know that sometimes you may get questions about history, where it came, how we got it. This report gives you a lot of information. I also want to point out that there is a website on www.cnwo.org/riverbed. That's also inside this report. Anytime you have a question about the ownership of the river, about where it may be, our ownership, there's actually an Excel spreadsheet I have there that lists every tract. We have 141 sections of land involved from Three Forks to Fort Smith, Arkansas. So there's a lot of land in this river. Basically, we're going to, when we do finish, and what we're working on after the settlement, when the settlement was finalized December 13, 2002, the tribes elected to retain the wet bed of the Arkansas River. That is, and what we did there in that situation, the tribes gave up any claims they had to the uplands. This was where our problems. This is where we had third-party trespassers. We had a lot of people out here who were, maybe even the allottees in some cases, who were allotted along this river. We saw lots of issues involved with this. This is one of the reasons the government and the 3 tribes came to an agreement with the final settlement of $40 million, which was distributed, all that has been distributed now. 50% of that was Cherokee Nation, 37.5% went to the Choctaws, 12.5% went to the Chickasaws. That's the basic ownership. From Three Forks in Muskogee, if you're familiar with that location on the river, that's where the Arkansas riverbed properties begin. It's solely owned by the Cherokee Nation until the mouth of the South Canadian River, which comes in just below Weber Falls. From South Canadian to Fort Smith, Arkansas, it's owned half by the Cherokees, 37.5% by the Choctaws, and 12.5% by the Chickasaws. Starting at Kerr Dam, if you're familiar with 59 Highway, where it crosses the Arkansas, where the Kerr Dam is, to Fort Smith, Arkansas. That's where all of our producing properties are. That's where all of our gas leases that we have that are producing. And it's like a lot of this country, even in some of the Cherokee Nation area, you're starting to see areas of development for gas. I'm glad to see that happening finally in northeastern Oklahoma. But a lot of that has affected our river. It will help us also with our new leases that we're starting to generate on this river. And of course, our primary responsibility here in the riverbed office, this office now is more of a function as getting it developed and as a office that will operate as a management office. In the past, we've been more of a support for litigation. We've helped all these years with the various ongoing trials and the cases that we've had against the federal government. We're now, after the Settlement Act, we have finally came to a conclusion as to what we actually own, and we're in the process working with BLM cadastral survey people to finish the survey on this river, because after the Settlement Act, we had to go back in and digitize the actual river, because the Settlement Act, it indicates, and there's a copy on the website of the Settlement Act, the Settlement Act, where you gave up your upland, you retained everything below the means high water mark. So the means high water mark is the average level of the river wherever it may be at this time. The digitization of the river for our ownership will be off of 203 aerial photos. At the present time, we have completed 1127, 1027, and 1026. There's 3 townships. That's about 18 miles of river. That's been finalized, and we have the actual acreage for each section. I will eventually have this on our website that will show you the approved plats. It will also indicate the exact acreage that we own in the river in those townships. As we progress up the river, we will add that into this website. In your report, page 4, you'll see income from 1997 to 2007. This is just a 10-year, put this in here just as a 10-year indicator of the amount of money the river generates. This is the total amount. This amount here would reflect 50% of these amounts would belong to the Cherokee Nation. I've also put a little report showing you what the price of natural gas is, very important as to what we receive, because that does change on a monthly basis. You'll also have on page 5 a report starting in 1976. This is every dollar that this river has ever made, from sand and gravel, rights of ways, lease bonuses, and royalties. You can see from royalty from MMS, this is, and through the BIA, this started in 1976. We've generated around $7,400,000 just from the oil and gas royalties from that time frame up through December 2007. Funds from the state of Oklahoma that we took over with the Eastern District of Oklahoma case, after the Supreme Court case, we took back $1,015,000 from them. The lease bonuses collected by the BIA from all the leases. We have probably made 100+ leases on this river since its inception, since we took it over. That bonus is $1,153,000 right now, just from lease bonuses alone. We have generated about $680,000 from sand, gravel. Business leases like your Fort Howard, your Port Authority, those have generated around $79,000. Right-of-ways about $60,000. The Settlement Act generated $40 million all total. These are proceeds that we got from the river. As of this time, we've got about $50 million plus that we've generated from your trust resources on the Arkansas riverbed. Your last page, page 6 there, is just a short report of what we received during 2008. We average about, you can see first quarter 2008 we made $75,000. Second quarter we generated $96,000. I do a report monthly for the various, for the Cherokees, Choctaws, and Chickasaws. They get a monthly report reflecting the income that we receive from our producing oil and gas properties. Questions?
Yes. On page 5 of the $50 million, approximately what percentage of that is the Cherokee Nation?
50%.
But we own all of it from Three Forks south to the mouth of the Canadian.
Right.
And then 50% of the balance. So should we be getting more than 50% of Cumberland County?
What we have, the bulk of the $40 million that we have there for the settlement, in that settlement it indicated 50%, 37.5%, and 12.5%. When we get down to other income that we generate, oil and gas, that basically comes from Kerr Dam to Fort Smith, and that's all in the area of the river where it's owned by the 3 tribes. And we get into that 50%, 37.5%, and 12.5%.
Now that part I understand. But I figure we should get more than half of the 50 million since we own it.
Well, good question. Good question. It's I know the Settlement Act itself contains the language as to how the monies will be divided, and that again breaks up the bulk of the money. On the reach from Muskogee or Three Forks to the South Canadian, we have all the monies that were generated from Fort Howard, from the Port Authority. Any of those resources, and that's 100% goes to Cherokee Nation in that part. Any part of that goes 100% in that part. But the bulk of the monies that we're talking about here does come from the reach, from that stretch where we have the joint ownership. And again, the $40 million actually came from the Settlement Act. Yes, sir.
Is there Mr. Baker?
No, but I'm fine for now.
Ms. Lori Jordan?
Wasn't there an agreement amongst the 3 tribes to share it that way?
Yes, thanks, Scott. In 1976, basically after this first case, after this money started flowing through, there's been 2 agreements. That agreement was made in 1976, and it sets out, and I'll be glad to furnish those copies. It sets out how the monies from this river, resources from this river, will be divided. And in 1991, there was another agreement drawn up, and prior to 76, or in 76 through 91, the ownership of that river was the thread of the stream, the middle of the river. And each oil and gas lease that we had, you had a percentage that the Cherokees owned this percent and the Choctaws owned this percent, and it always was not 50% and 30. It wasn't always that way. But starting in 91 with this last agreement among the authority as to how their monies would be divided, up until that time it was divided on wherever that thread of that river was in that particular section as to the percentage that the tribes owned. After that date in 91, it made it a lot simpler and a lot easier to manage with their agreement that they made that would give 50%, 37.5, and 12.5. And that's basically all resources except the area where the Choctaws do not own an interest in. That part. I'm glad to have Tina. Tina was one of our riverbed directors for several years, and it helps to have some fact in this too.
I actually think, and it would be hard to go back and calculate, but I think by agreeing to the 50% and where the location of the gas wells are, we probably profited more by making that agreement than if we had broke it along the lines of actual ownership. One time we looked at that a long time
I'm sure,
ago.
and like I said, that was early in 1991 when that was done. I'm sure there had to be a lot of information put together at that time to see what would happen if that split was made that way. I think I probably provided some dollar figures, but it wasn't part of that initial or that final agreement that was that the tribes arrived at.
Charlie and I and Jack Chinese all worked together on the riverbed when they were in the bureau and I was over at riverbed.
Right.
It's good to see you.
Been a few years.
Yeah, it's good to see you come aboard for us, though.
Thank you.
Mr. Garvin?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. You mentioned Fort Howard and Muskogee.
Yes, sir.
What other business do we deal with besides Fort Howard?
In the upper reach, we deal with the Port Authority. They have a long-term business lease also there.
What about those north of the bridge there on the west side?
North of the bridge on the west side, that would be all Port Authority. You're talking about the 64 highway bridge, or 62 highway bridge, where we cross over in north, and then on the west side.
There's a lot of steel businesses and grain.
What we have there, the port built and what we have with the Port Authority is actually where the port put their piers out into the Arkansas River. That's the portion that belongs to the authority in that case. Those areas, those buildings that you're mentioning or seeing there on the west bank, do not own any of our tribal property. Although they may, the Port Authority made their lease, I think that was you might correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that was a 98-year special type provision went through legislative.
It's got some, I don't mean to interrupt, but it's got some extensions too.
Right, and some extensions that went along with that.
How often do you renegotiate with Fort Howard?
Fort Howard was a 50-year contract. They pay a yearly sum of money for that.
There's no one else down the river besides Fort Howard?
When you go, no, sir. There have been some crossings, like the power lines, that, anytime there's crossings or something that's been put in the last 20 years, we'll say that we have collected a one-time payment for power lines, gas lines that go underneath the river, bridges or anything that may cross the river. Those require approval of the Secretary where those monies would go into. Now, there is in Weber Falls, there is a business lease that was made there some years back for storage there's a storage for grain, soybeans right there.
What kind of arrangement do you have with Fort Howard? Do you sell them water, or they get water?
As far as I know, sir, on that, I'm not familiar with any arrangements that we have for taking the water. And of course, they take in the water there at the outlet, or inlets, and then they outlet right there, just right down below this facility. I was out there Tuesday. I picked the coldest day of the year to do an inspection on the river, right north of the reach.
And Mr. Garvin, anything else?
Is there any restriction on what kind of water they put back in the river?
I'm sure there must be. I think that most of the cases, the water control is still handled by the Oklahoma Resource Water, and they actually handle that part. We're not involved in that.
Thank you, Madam.
Ms. Gloria Jordan?
They probably just need to make sure they understand, Charlie, we just own the bed, we don't control the water.
Right. We own We used to own the bank and the bed. There was a portion of the bank, but now we own the bed of it. What we own, the way we arrived at our ownership, it was never allotted. The water that runs over that, sometimes that's an issue in this state as to who, I'm sure it's an issue in a lot of our tribes as to who owns the water. But right now, that's not something that we've ever entered into in the Riverbed Authority, as far as I know. I think could be some issues there.
And just to add for Charlie, don't you still, when you need to get a lease agreed to, you still have to bring it before the respective councils of each tribe?
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
So, and every lease that has been agreed to on the Arkansas River, at least during the time I was there, and I'm sure it's still this way, always came back through their resource department at each tribe and was brought to the council to be approved.
That's right. No document affecting the lease or affecting this river can be approved by the secretary unless it has a council resolution. Our council resolutions, when you get below South Canadian, we have to have 3 of them in that case. But it's no different than any of your other trust lands. It has to be, it's managed in that situation now. We, again, one of the things I've got to do and need to do, you have to understand that this river's been there for years. The navigation's been there since 59, basically 60. There's been a lot of things crossed that river that we may not know about. The Corps of Engineers in most cases approved all the permits, and they still do approve permits because of the navigational servitude. You cannot do anything in the river or even in our bed of the river unless you have a permit from the Corps of Engineers. We're working with them. Ty probably realizes too. She's tried, I've tried. They're a tough cookie sometimes working with the Corps of Engineers. But we are slowly trying our best to work with them so we do receive every permit that they issue. Or before they issue a permit, they give out a letter. They give out a notice to everybody. We get all those. I check every one of those to see if that involves any portion of the riverbed that we may know.
Yourself?
So what agreements do we have with the state for any types of intrusions into the bed and so forth? Is there any agreements existing on that?
Is there any agreements that we have with the state or any? None. No. State, the state of Oklahoma, as far as any ownership they may have had.
To build bridges across it. So
ODOT, yes. If ODOT comes in, builds bridge, builds protective, you've seen some protective bumpers put out in front of the bridges that are in existence. Those all have to be approved through a council resolution.
Right. What's the agreement? So anytime somebody builds new bridges or whatever across the river, they have to get approved.
They have to get approved easement or right of way. Right. That part. That has to be approved.
Existing on file or not?
We have every one of them on file that we've approved. Right. Somewhere or another, that document is in our files, either with this office, or in most cases, the Bureau of Indian Affairs has all the primary documents that was approved. We eventually got a copy of that part. But no. Good.
How much leeway time does the Corps give you when they send out a letter versus the time they approve it? You said they send you a letter. How?
What you get a notification letter from the Corps saying that so-and-so is going to do certain, he's made application to cross the river, whatever it may be, and they have to go through their process of letting the public be aware. It's a notification letter. In most cases, they do an EA. They go through this whole process in that part. It gives us an indication that we have somebody who may be wanting to cross our river in an area that we aren't interested in. That's when that gives us an opportunity to contact that party, because they may not have known to contact.
Is there a leeway time that's specified?
Yes, sir. Normally 120 days on those.
All right, that's good. Thank you.
Mr. Badger?
On the oil and gas leases, how often are they negotiated on the contract?
An oil and gas contract is no matter where you make it, if it's commercial, department, or whatever, it's a lease made for a primary term, usually 3 years on all of ours, and as long thereafter as oil or gas is produced in paying quantities. We have leases out there that we took over 1976 from the state of Oklahoma that were made in the 60s. Some of those leases, as long as those leases produce gas, those leases will be held by the term of their lease.
So the prices of those negotiations can be negotiated every 3 years?
No, sir.
I mean, I wonder what we paid, I wonder what we were paid back in the 60s of what versus we're paid today is what I'm asking.
Probably, I can only guess what we probably would receive, but typically an oil and gas lease made in the 60s might have made $10 for an acre for bonus, and probably has a 1/8 rate of royalty. Once the Bureau took over the operation in 1976, all leases that were made at that time were 1/6. We increased the rate of royalty in the mid-80s to 3/16, and we went to a 1/5 for a while during the real boom time. I think that probably the Bureau should have went back to a 1/5 a couple of years ago. But the way that we're seeing come across the state, where all of our high dollars that we're receiving for bonuses, that wave is slowly moving on to the east. It's getting over into Arkansas now, some places away from us. But we get our 3/16. The only thing, when you make an oil and gas lease, basically there's not much left to negotiate. It's a done deal. When you make that lease and sign that contract and it's approved by the Secretary, what you have left, you received a bonus. That bonus is now appraised by the Bureau of Land Management. We are typically, I think the last 6 we had to go through ranged about $250 an acre in that area. But the rate of royalty that's in a contract that's approved is a rate of royalty that cannot be adjusted unless the lessee or the owner of that lease agrees to it.
Thank you.
Yes. Any other questions? Mr. Robertson? Sure appreciate your time today and the presentation. Ms. Gordon?
I'd like to make a motion that coinciding with your meetings with the other tribes, when you prepare a report, that he provide that report to this body. Not a report in addition to what you already do, but anytime you generate a report,
Okay.
you could share with us that you provide that to this body.
And it used to be that the Riverbed Authority.
Do we have a second? Now, further discussion. Did you want to make a comment in regard to her motion?
Yes. In the past, we had intertribal council meetings where the Arkansas Riverbed always had a meeting, and people were invited to attend those meetings if they liked. Since most cases our intertribal council meetings are no longer something that we have, I have quarterly meetings with the Cherokees, Choctaws, and Chickasaws at a date that the chief is willing and can sit down and visit with me and whomever he has in the meeting. So we do those quarterly. So I just finished up with quarterly meetings, and I'll have new quarterly meetings the 1st of January. So we start.
Yes, Ms. Coates?
I would just ask the Councilwoman Jordan, is there a reason for making this as a motion rather than just a simple request? If we would request
Well, I
reports from
just
the
didn't
others?
want him to have to come every month because I knew he reported quarterly
Right.
to all the
If you could
tribes.
just on the request that we make today, just present us with a written report.
That's what I'm sorry, did I not make that clear? That's
Okay.
what I was asking.
Okay.
Not that he give a fiscal report,
Right.
that he just provide us the written report that he provides to
My
all
question
other.
to you was, is there some reason why you were making that in the form of a motion rather than simply making the request to him? Does this need to be a motion that we vote
Dr.
on?
Henry?
Yeah, it would
doesn't
be,
matter to me, just so
Hold on
you
just
get
a
it.
second, please. Mr. Henry?
it would be an appropriate form for a motion because it would be, she's asking if this is the will of the body. Any one counselor can ask for a report and get it, but if the report to be officially disseminated to the council of the whole, it needs to be an action of the council. So 2 ways to skin the cat, but a motion is perfectly appropriate.
Okay. Any other questions?
Just a comment. My thinking was this generates actually a great amount of money that's probably going into our general fund, and I just thought you all might want to see as a body where some of our funds are coming from. And I knew he was preparing the reports anyway, so I thought maybe he could make us 17 more copies.
I prepare a report similar to what I have here before you for each one of my meetings, and it's different. Each tribe has, I give a separate report because of the income. I give a separate report just for theirs. The way we,
I think we're just interested in the Cherokee
yes,
part.
that's what we do. That's what we give.
Any other questions? Mr. Dr. Cobb?
Who is actually negotiating these leases? What?
Okay, is that germane to the motion?
Oh, I'm sorry, we haven't voted on it yet, my fault.
All in favor signify by saying aye. All opposed, same sign. Thank you. Now, Dr. Cobb?
Who's actually negotiating those leases? Who's in the room negotiating those leases?
Okay. Typically, the question we have is, when we have a new oil and gas lease, who negotiates for the Arkansas Riverbed Authority? That would be my charge. That part. And that would be from an appraisal that we have from the Bureau of Land Management. The Bureau of Indian Affairs also has a responsibility because they do advertise these tracts. They are the final approval office that has to approve them. But that's basically part of my call to work with the companies. If it's below appraisal, then I call those companies up, telling them we need to raise the value if we plan on getting a lease on this property.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
And next order of business, 2 items under old business. Item 1 is mortgage foreclosure for discussion only. Who is providing that report? Mr. Morton.
I made a partial chart, and that's what I handed out earlier. This one's designated out by the type of loan it is, and most of these are where we have the second mortgage. And what's listed is, for informational purposes, how much the original mortgage was for and how much our second is for. On these type, it looks like these are mostly used to pay the down payment of a loan and are sometimes filed immediately after the first mortgage with the county clerk. And on these also listed is the date of the instrument, which if you go to the first on the list, it's 7/5/07 is when it was signed, and then 8/5/08, a little over a year later, is when the foreclosure process started legally through the courts. These are the ones I can confirm and double check the numbers on. It looks like there are about 44 cases currently with the office at various stages, and an unofficial breakdown is Title VI's would include a total of 6, MAPs are running at 26, and it looks like we have 9 that are in bankruptcy. And there is one that I didn't know how to characterize, but I have it pending. It's another one, and it is a first mortgage with us, but I'm looking at it.
Any questions for Mr. Morton? Ms. Lori Jordan, and then Dr. Todd.
I know that we are somewhat contemplating, and correct me if I'm wrong, maybe using some of our housing money to buy foreclosures. And I wondered if this was maybe some of the foreclosures that we might want to encourage them to look at. Because we already have, upwards of $15,000 in some of these homes. And I just throw that out to the council that coming down the pike, I think from our work group, may be that recommendation that some of the money be used for foreclosures, and we may want to consider some of these houses. I guess it's not so much a question as a comment that you all might want to give that some thought. You've got 44 homes now that eventually may become available.
Yes.
And we are going to, Harley, is that correct, maybe use some money for potential foreclosure situations?
Yeah, and that's what we discussed in our work group meeting as far as housing, Mason, that we probably would want to identify these 40 homes and get them over to our, probably Marvin Jones, that group there.
Okay.
We can actually start taking that.
Okay. And these will be taken care of mostly either by the ones listed here will probably have to all go to a sheriff's sale, so we can coordinate the date you can go and bid, and normally the only other bidder is the person holding the first mortgage, and they try to get what they have out of it as much as possible, so that's who you'll be bidding against.
Yeah. And we had discussed some of that in our work group meeting, and yeah, we would like to have that list, or at least 44 to the housing group, or the Marvin Jones. That's what we start looking for. Thank you.
Would I still have the floor?
Okay.
Would it be possible, Mr. Morton, that you might provide county and addresses on these, so that if the respective counselors within those counties would like to kind of do a drive-by and just look at those homes, you could probably see pretty quick whether it's something that is going to, some of them may be tore up really bad, but some of them may still have some potential.
The information I provide comes directly from what is filed, so I can give, if they list the actual address, I can provide the address. If they list the legal, I can give that too. But I just take these actually from the documents that are public records, and I can forward those on.
Actually, you can get the file from the housing authority, and it will have their addresses. It'll have those, if it's a Title VI or a buy-down.
Well, I don't know if I can directly release those. I'll coordinate through, because what I release on these are actually what is in the office from my office when I create these, just to make sure that I can verify it, and then when I give you a number, it's something I've looked at and just came through. But I can check on release of the actual file. I just come out of what's in my file.
And I think now, under some of the new foreclosure rules, when they do that final notice to the sheriff, for the sheriff's sale, they've got to put that address anymore underneath the legal.
That's my understanding too, but I will make sure, but I think all of these do list a physical address as well as the legal description.
Dr. Cobb?
I just want to be clear to make sure these foreclosed, we don't have any, as a nation, we don't have any money invested in these at all. Is that correct?
It's the 15,000 second mortgage.
Other than second mortgage, we didn't go on the first mortgage of these from our.
Next to the last one. I believe on this sheet, the only one is the Title VI that's now in Chapter 13.
Right.
That is a first mortgage by us. And on the Chapter 13, the person pays all the money to the trustee, and then they are currently paying the monthly payment on it.
Got it. But all the other first, and I should have worded that differently, all the other first mortgages was not us, and we were the second.
On this list. I'm going to update the list because.
The last one.
Yes.
That's what I wanted to make sure.
And I'm sorry, that's my fault. The ones I could confirm and get done, I gave you a partial, and I have about 29 more that I need to add in, and I will supplement that well in advance of the next meeting.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Stokes?
Did you see anything that was unscrupulous or anything as you look at the primary lender on the first mortgage? Is there any consistent pattern that demonstrates that there's, one mortgage company that's showing up more than any others, or do you notice anything like that just looking at the process?
No, I haven't. Normally the same groups have a lot of the mortgage. Either they actually did the first one or they have purchased it secondarily. So I see the same names and the same attorneys throughout, but I don't know whether that is inconsistent with the national average or not.
Right. Thank you.
Mr. Badger?
I just want to comment on Dr. Cobb's comment ago. Dr. Cobb, you're saying the $15,000 and the $10,000 in second mortgages, but actually, in reality, we could have as much as $25,000 to $30,000 invested in those particular properties there. And I can get with you after this meeting and go over that. Thank you.
Dr. Cobb, did you have a comment? You had your hand up in regard to his statement.
I guess what, and I'll be the first to admit this isn't my area of expertise, but I'm looking at one of these mortgages, the original first mortgage, you're looking at a $160,000 home here. And we have conversations quite frequently about housing for our citizens. And I guess my concern is Councilor Soap made the comment, I believe, just a second ago, was when you're looking at a second mortgage, we have conversations about people being able to get housing, period. Is there a conscious decision? I mean, do we have conversations in our mortgage departments whether we need to be getting in the business of doing second mortgage on the $160,000 homes? You following what I'm saying? I mean,
yes.
We got people that need homes, and we're getting in the business of doing a second mortgage on a pretty nice house here.
My involvement in these begins when there is a foreclosure action filed. And at that point, we enter the case and assert our interest and make sure that our second mortgage is taken care of in case there's any money left to pay the second mortgage. 9 times out of 10, or a greater amount than that, there is nothing left. And so the other option is we try to get a personal judgment against the person, and at some point, try to collect that.
And this may be a
So,
conversation.
and that's a policy, I just
Right.
do the legal end.
Nathan, may I interrupt? Ms. Smith, did you have something you wanted?
Yeah, if you don't mind if I address Dr. Cobb's question. One of the things that has changed with the mortgage assistance program is what happened when you look at some of those, probably someone who met our income guidelines can't afford a $160,000
Right, that's
house,
kind of what I'm
which
going
is why
with.
they're in the situation they're in now. So what we're looking at now is not only can the person qualify for a $160,000 mortgage, but can they really make the payment based on their income and their income alone? And so hopefully those types of situations will not continue to occur. Okay, so I believe that issue is being
This is
addressed.
kind of a fallout from what's been going on the
Right.
last few years across the country, is why the real estate market got in the situation.
Somewhat,
it's
yes.
in. Okay,
Yes.
okay. That's what I wanted to know. I mean, that was really my question. Thank you. I appreciate it. Thanks.
Anything else? Ms. Fishing-Hawk?
I just want to make sure he's going to continue the list on a monthly basis. Is that what I heard?
Yes, I can update it. And some of these, actually, the number I listed may or may not fall into an actual foreclosure. They may be some legal situation that comes involving a lease or something like that that is not actual. We may actually still own the property. And I can either include those or list those as other.
Okay, you said there's about 44 cases in this.
Yes, and I am including in those ones that are not actually foreclosures. It's we own some interest in the property and it's in a legal, but I did not include in that list anything like a quiet title or something like that. It just involved whether there was a delinquent on a lease or something where they have claimed in a bankruptcy that they have an interest in a property, whether we have a secured interest in something that they own.
Thank you.
But yes, I will update the others, and I will list them as other or not involved in a foreclosure to list what they are.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nathan. Any other questions, comments? Item 2 under old business is an act authorizing a citizen database. Todd, are you going to do that one?
Yes, I'll begin. It's my understanding, with permission of the sponsor, that we will discuss this and then there'll be a motion to table and give more time for the consideration of the committee. First, a couple of things that have happened. Based on the comments of the last members in the last committee, we have made certain changes to the act itself. Number one, we made it, the addresses would be for adult Cherokee citizens who have attained the age of 18, and minors' names and addresses would not be included on any such database. Secondly, we have added a clause in Section 5A, the underlying portion that says, "This list shall not be used for campaign or election purposes, and materials distributed by use of this list shall not advocate passage or defeat of any initiative or referendum." The purpose of that language is to depoliticize any use of the list. The use of the list is to inform tribal citizens about the workings of Cherokee Nation government and other useful information. Third, in order to preserve the sanctity of the list, under the Freedom of Information Act, Section 2, it allows for government entities to exempt certain information to be made public. Under that, Section 6.2 is names, addresses, and other information about the tribal citizens. So therefore, this body could have a list and declare it exempt from publication through the Freedom of Information Act. Much in the same way, because it's registration information, and under the Freedom of Information Act itself, registration information is exempt. Also today, right before the meeting, Mr. Morton has made or created a memorandum concerning this list. I'll defer to his comments, but and obviously over the next month, please read that memorandum. In a nutshell, it says that this is something that the council can legally do. And it'll be basically a policy decision whether you choose to implement it. Lastly, and I wanted to have it for you today, but unfortunately it didn't come in, but you will receive what I perceive as an example of what I perceive this newsletter or something should look like. And it will be information, for example, a company that I've dealt with, says, let's put together something. It will have your picture on it. It will have a place for a personal statement that you make. To have information of monthly or quarterly news that the Cherokee Nation has. Any information about programs that are coming up that they may apply to. Obviously, if you wanted to put in there that, please register to vote, you may even put in a segment where, to come vote, or to come to the office. Well, strike that. It will have, you could put in a piece of information on an actual voter registration form where they can just fill it in and mail it out. The idea of the act itself is not to be political, but enable you as a government to contact your constituents and whether they're registered to vote or not, and inform them about the news of the Cherokee Nation and about available programs that are there. That's the purpose of the act, and I will be giving you an example of what I would perceive that the newsletter should look like. I would defer any comment to Mr. Morton if you wanted to comment further on the memorandum, or if you wanted to ask him questions about it. I know you just got it, but please read it over, and I'll yield to any questions or anything else.
The little pamphlet you just showed, that's an example of what we might use it for.
Right.
And
an example.
Is there anything in the criminal code that addresses the misuse of tribal citizen identity right now that you know of?
No, not to my knowledge. In the Cherokee Nation Criminal Code, there are one thing, obviously, let's take a counselor who misused this act. That would or could equate misfeasance or malfeasance in office, and we have an impeachment act, or that one could, that. And if we want to incorporate or make reference to that act in and of itself in this one, that would be appropriate. So there is teeth behind it that if you misuse it, it could vote against you. One of the items that the Cherokee Nation government has this list in the registration department. They have the names, addresses, all kinds of information, Social Security numbers, CNO numbers, and that list is over there in the registration department, which is a part of the executive branch. Well, this is a branch of the government also, an equal branch of the government. The idea behind this act is just to allow information that one branch has to the other branch, and it puts very specific restrictions on how that information can be used.
Ms. Gloria Jordan, did you get your hand up?
I did not get a copy of Mr. Morton's memorandum.
It should, if you don't, I will make sure you have it, but I thought they...
Make sure that all of the council...
Okay, I thought they were passed out
Hold
here.
your BlackBerry. That's where mine came from.
Madam Chairman, what I will make sure is that Gail or Robbie make a copy of it right now, and you guys will have it before you leave here today.
And I still have the floor.
Okay.
Then I move to withdraw the act at this time.
Withdraw or table?
If we table, does that just come back up every month?
Table goes from month to month. If you want to withdraw it and resubmit it at any other time, that's your prerogative as a sponsor.
That's what I want to do.
Withdraw it? Okay.
You want to withdraw the act at this time? Okay. Okay, moving on to new business. We have a resolution for 4 different people to the Education Corporation Board of Directors. Who are presenting? None of those people are present, correct? Or who's presenting that? Okay.
We have one nomination and three renominations for the Education Corporation Board of Commissioners. Their resumes are attached. If you have any questions about anybody, I would be more than happy to try to get that information for you.
I move for approval.
Second.
Moved in second. Discussion, Ms. Lori Jordan.
There's not any way that we can get them to come here and talk to us. I have some questions on the renomination 3 about the Education Corporation itself.
Okay.
And I would move to table these nominations so that we could have them here to answer some questions.
All four.
Yes, I think all four. This is a very important corporation that I have found out has $1.5 million at its disposal to give out in scholarships, and I would like to visit with the people that we're appointing to the board to kind of see what their demeanor is on some of their activities. I'm not against the appointments, I want you to understand, but I would
Can you
like
have those
to...
people here next month?
Certainly.
We have, so a motion to table item 1, 2, 3, and 4, correct?
Yes.
And do I have a second? Moved in second. Any discussion on tabling? All in favor signify by saying aye. All opposed, same sign.
No.
Roll call. Yes is to table.
Yes.
Bradley Cobb,
No.
Joe Crittenden,
Yes.
Jody Fishinghawk,
Yes.
Meredith Fraley,
Yes.
Janelle Fulbright,
No.
Don Garvin,
No.
Chuck Hoskin Jr.,
Yes.
Tina Gloria Jordan,
Yes.
Curtis Snell,
No.
Chris Stowe,
Yes.
David Thornton,
No.
Kara Cowan Watts,
No.
Bill Anglin,
No.
Bill John Baker,
Yes.
Jack Baker,
Yes.
Harley Buzzard,
Yes.
10 yes and 7 no.
10 yes, 7 no. A motion carries to table to next month. Okay, item 5 under new business is a constitutional amendment covering term limits. Ms. Cowan Watts.
I'd like to table it till next month since I'm not physically there to discuss it.
Second.
Moved in second to table. Any discussion on tabling this item 5? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign.
Aye.
Why don't we just get that? Motion carries. Are there any announcements?
Move for adjournment.
Moved in second. All in favor of adjourning signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. What you say no.
Hell,